The evil queen thought that Snow White would end up buried. But the dwarves were like, no, we can't do it. We're going to put her in this glass casket. And eventually, of course, the prince shows up. What is the chemical and what is the antidote that is on the guy's lips, the prince's lips? Now, when I was a kid, we had these safety kits, these first aid kits. And one ingredient that was common in them was smelling salts, right? You break the little vial and you get that knife blade into the brain. So I'm thinking maybe the prince had such bad breath that when he kissed her, she like, what the hell, I'm awake. Like that.
3, 2, 1, punch it.
Could you jump to light speed in that tin can? Go back in time in the DeLorean. Will it crash or take to the sky? Tell me, smart guy, does it fly?
Welcome to Does It Fly? The podcast that puts your favorite sci-fi properties, inventions, and conceits to the test. I'm your mad scientist, Hakeem Oluseyi.
And I'm your pop culture expert, Tamara Krinsky. Time to dive into today's topic and see, does it fly? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest host of all?
That would be you, my Tamara.
I think that would be you, my Dr. O.
I can't be fair. I'm unfair.
You have proven that time and again when choosing between whether to use technology for good or evil, so I'll give you that.
Life ain't fair. Get used to it. You know what I'm saying? You got to deal with wicked witches sometimes. And you know.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Does It Fly, the podcast where we talk science and story about your favorite gadgets, gizmos, and conceits in all different kinds of movies. Today, as you may have picked up, we are talking about a classic. We are time traveling back. What are we going to talk about today, Hakeem?
We are talking about the classic movie Snow White, invented by the Brothers Grimm.
That's right. We are talking about the 1937 movie from Disney specifically. It was the very first full-length animated feature with Sing Sound, and it was revolutionary at the time and still is in many ways. So we're going to dig into that, specifically talking about the conceit of true love's kiss. And love. So when we're talking, you're like, your guys are talking about kissing on a technology show. But so specifically, what we're going to look into here is the idea that when Snow White is, I think everybody knows this by now, so no spoilers. When Snow White succumbs to the apple, the poisoned apple proffered to her by her stepmother, and falls into a deep, deep slumber and or death, it's not quite clear, she is awakened. The antidote is love's true kiss.
Wait, is it her stepmother or the queen?
Yes, and. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, okay. So when Snow White is, when she's born, her mother dies soon after. The king remarries. And so it is both the stepmother and the evil queen. There are many different versions of Snow White. You mentioned the Brothers Grimm. They have a bunch of different iterations of this. In fact, here's a crazy thought. In the very first version of Snow White that they put out, it wasn't her stepmother. It was actually her mother.
Oh, geez.
Right.
Wow.
So in this story of envy, it was like actually taken up a notch. Yeah. And
so it reflected real life.
Yeah. And so, and in more recent times, we've had, everything from The Huntsman, which is a different take on the story. There's been a series, Once Upon a Time, which is a whole serialized version with fairy tale characters. So lots of different versions. But we're focusing today on the 1937 animated version, which really launched Disney animation into the force that it is today.
Yes. So, the science of true love's kiss just made me think about the power of kiss in my life. And if there were any kisses that stood out.
I hope
and there wasn't.
I hope so.
Well, it wasn't love. It was something like an 80s movie. And I'll tell you what it was. So I was in the band. and I was in middle school, okay? And my family was regular picking me up late from band practice. And sometimes they wouldn't pick me up at all. But because it was rural, you saw walking up the highway, somebody would pick you up. You know, you even sleep at somebody's house that night if you don't make it all the way home. It wasn't an unusual thing for me. So this one day, I go there and I'm waiting out in front of the gym, and there are some young women who are like juniors in high school. I'm like 13. They're juniors in high school. And they call me over and they start talking about me. And they say, yeah, I hear he's the smartest kid, you know, in middle school nowadays. And the one girl says to me like, oh, you're kind of cute. Do you want to kiss?
Oh, dang, Hakeem.
Right. I'll tell you her name right now. Her name is Ann Barnett. Her and her sister were famous in our little town because they were just so amazingly gorgeous. And Ann Barnett went on to Alcorn State University, and they have in the band these dancing girls known as the Golden Girls. And Ann Barnett became the lead Golden Girl. So she was like, you know, my
Ann
little
was
13,
the swizzle.
yeah, my 13-year-old mind was blown. Let me tell you, it never grew into true love. It was just a older teenage girl doing a proper for a little
But
pubescent boy.
it sounds like it kind of had some magical properties and that it transported you.
Here I am, you know, all these decades later, still like thinking about that little boy I was and how mind blowing.
Was that your first kiss?
I don't think it was my actual first kiss. My first kiss happened shortly before that. You know, I showed up in Mississippi and, you know, I didn't know anything about anything. And I had been, you know, this bookish kid who I keep to myself. And this girl, her name was Frida Terrell. She tells me, you're my boyfriend. And I'm like, okay, I'm your boyfriend, right? There was no dating or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So at the, you know, we're just at school and she's like, you're my boyfriend. I'm okay, I'm your boyfriend. And my first kiss was at the end of the school year. You have a school party. And she said, come with me to the vending machine room, which is right next to the gym. And we get to the vending machine room and she plants one on me.
You never do not underestimate the power of a Mars bar.
Right? I was such an innocent kid, you know, and so just being so innocent, the mind-blowing nature of some girl kissing me just really, you know, it awakened me. It awakened me from my slumber.
Mine was, I'll just share my first kiss story and then we'll dive into the science. Mine was actually, I feel like this is not going to surprise you. Mine was actually, while I was at sleepaway camp. It was the summer after sixth
theater
grade.
camp?
Well, no, but that's the funny part. So I went to like a big, you know, like general sleepaway camp, like big Jewish sleepaway camp in the in the Poconos. You know, you did like archery and color war and swim, except all I did while I was there was the plays. And that's why eventually I left that camp and went to another camp called Stage Door Manor, which was a pure theater camp. But at that point, this was my first summer there. We were doing the classic Bye Bye Birdie. And part of the cool thing, if you were doing the play at camp, was that you got a special activity one night where they would take you to the Hillside Rec, you know, which they have all these structures. So one was called the Hillside Rec. And they would show you the movie of the play, of the movie of musical. And, you know, everyone, the whole cast and crew, you would like bring your sleeping bags and hang out. And yeah. So I was dating, I'm just hearing myself say this. My husband's name is Matt. I was actually dating a guy named Matt. We had just started dating. And I received my first kiss during a watching of Bye Bye Birdie in the Hillside Rec.
Wow. That's a much better story than the vending machine room.
No, I like the vending machine room story. I do. Yeah. But it definitely launched me. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I love musical theater so much because in part I associate it with good positive reinforcement.
You know, and when we talk about the vibe, that's one thing I always wondered about for actors, you know, the whole thing of like kissing people who are not your partner on screen. Like, how does that work in your regular life?
Ask a different actor, get a different story. All right.
Right? I bet. Yeah, it's unique. So the science of love's last kiss. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, surprisingly, there's actual science to love. There's a lot of elements that go into it, right? There's attractiveness, of course. And I'm talking about romantic love here. We experience different types of love, but romantic love, the type that leads to reproduction, that may lead to reproduction. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
That may lead to raising a younger Homo sapiens. There's attraction, which takes place as chemistry in the mind, right? There is lust, which also are, chemical signals. And then there is attachment, where you're now partnered. And that is the true love element, when the kiss leads to now we're partnered. And the general idea is that you're going to be partnered for life. In the modern world, it doesn't always work out that way. But, just choosing to be with someone every day is that says a lot about the feelings two people share. As an example, once upon a time, I needed a roommate. And my buddy said, "Hey, I'll be your roommate." And my response was, "No, you can't be my roommate because you're my friend and I don't want to hate you."
I'm not sure if that's the insult, if that's a knock on his roommating skills or your own roommating skills.
Maybe it's me, but if you're, a non-romantic roommate, this is only going to end up in one location unless you're just a really chill human, right? And that's what I'm saying, is that cohabitating with someone doesn't necessarily end up being a good thing. But when you find your person, it is a good thing, right? It's a great thing. You have 100%, nearly 24-hour access to that person that you are attached to.
So so love's kiss as sort of an antidote. Love's kiss is something that causes a chemical reaction. This idea that, you're a slumber and suddenly it can wake you up. Tell me more about this.
Okay, so let's get into the science of it. So there's 3 steps here. So the one step is you are given a chemical that puts you into this state that appears like death, except for the fact that you're still warm and you're still breathing, but there is no response to the world around you. And in this movie, the idea was that when the poison apple was administered, the evil queen thought that Snow White would end up buried. But the dwarves were like, "No, we can't do it. We're going to put her in this glass casket." And eventually, of course, the prince shows up. So the prince kisses her and she is awakened. And that was known to be a side effect or a vulnerability in the poison, that if she received love's true kiss, she would be awakened. But the queen thought, you're going to be buried underground by that time, so that's not going to be a problem. So
yeah, we see that as the antidote in the spell book when the queen is concocting the poisoned apple. That's
right. So now what that makes you think makes me think as a scientist is, what is the chemical and what is the antidote that is on the guy's lips, the prince's lips? Now, when I was a kid, we had these safety kits, these first aid kits. And one ingredient that was common in them was smelling salts, right? You break the little vial and you get that knife blade into the brain. So I'm thinking maybe the prince had such bad breath that when he kissed her, she like, I'm awake. What a nightmare.
Well, this did take place in sort of a long time ago, an unspecified time. I'm guessing showers and toothbrushes were not as plentiful. So, that's possible.
Well, that works against this theory, because that means that bad breath would have been normal. So people would have probably been nose blind to it. So, maybe that's not it. So let's get to the chemicals. So let's get to the good chemicals, the love chemicals. We got oxytocin, which has the same name as that drug, oxy, right? We got dopamine. Mm-hmm. We got serotonin. All of these generate feelings of goodness, calmness, and maybe even connection, right?
Love a good neurotransmitter.
Love a good oh man, we are a chemical reaction who respond to chemicals. So what does true love mean if you're unconscious, though, right? How does your brain know that this is your true love if you don't receive those love chemicals? If you're in a state where you don't have any sensory mechanisms that are active in that way, then, if the prince is talking to her, is her brain releasing the chemicals? Is she getting the good feeling, even though she's in this comatose state? Maybe she is. Maybe she's in a state where she can hear and experience everything, but she's not able to illustrate that, right? Which would have been terrible because, you're stuck in a body that you can't control.
Yeah.
So suppose it's so the whole idea of true love's kiss to me is a bit spotty because of the fact that love typically is a conscious phenomenon. These feelings of,
Right.
Somebody walks in the room while you're asleep. You don't go, wow, what a hunk, right?
Right.
You just ignore it. They don't exist as far as you're concerned.
So I totally hear what you're saying about it being a conscious thing. And while I was doing a little bit of a deeper dive for this episode into some of the thoughts about the movie and Love's Kiss, I came across something on the Princess blog, which I thought was interesting and I wanted to read to you.
The Princess blog?
The Princess blog. Yeah, giving a shout out to the Princess blog.
Okay.
This is what she wrote. She wrote, "A kiss of true love is not just any kiss, as Ursula explains to Ariel in The Little Mermaid about how to restore the curse on her voice. This means that a magical spell-breaking kiss will only work if it is from a person that the princess loves and wants to be kissed by. Enchanted, the movie, played with this concept by having Prince Edward fail to wake Giselle from her curse when it turned out that he wasn't her true love after all. When Robert kisses her and she opens her eyes, she smiles and says, 'I knew it was you.' In any fairy tale where a curse must be broken by a kiss, it is intrinsically required that the kiss is mutually desired."
Well, here is the question. Does that suggest that the prince and Snow White previously met so that she could know?
Yeah, they do previously meet. They meet earlier in the movie and, she sings the song, "Someday My Prince Will Come." So there's, it's clear that she has a thing for him. Now, whether we think it's enough time together to be true love or not, whether
you're way complicating it. It ain't, you know how it was when you were young.
We'll get to that when we talk about the story. Get back to the chemicals. Get back to the chemicals. But I thought that was
the other idea then. So now, I will tell you this. Typically, I watch the whatever we're talking about. I rewatch it.
Yeah.
I didn't rewatch Snow White. I'm like, I was going to
say, you clearly didn't rewatch it because you would.
I know Snow White. I don't need to rewatch Snow White. Where are the mice going to show up? Oh, wait a minute. That's Cinderella.
That's Cinderella.
So they knew each other. So now that means that her true love's kiss can actually be authentic. It can be a true love's kiss. So now the question becomes, I don't know if this makes sense, but it's always made sense to me. When you're with someone, so you kind of become addicted to their smell. You know what they are. You know their smell of their skin. You breathe their breath, their hair. So you kind of have this familiarity with them, right? You inhale your love interest. It's something that, is it just a me thing? But I think that's what we all do, right? So could it be that both having the stimulation of the senses of smell and the kiss on the lips, in combination, trigger the antidote within her? Because the only thing I'm left with, if it's not something of that nature, is he put on lip balm and there's some sort of true love antidote inside of it for the chemical. But I do feel like, based on what how the poison is described, I'm guessing that what occurs is when you have your true love's kiss, the chemical cascade that it creates inside of the body is the actual antidote for the chemical. So it's not that a new chemical is introduced. It's just that you have an experience that makes your brain or whatever else in your body release the chemicals that will counteract the antidote.
Got it. So the kiss is actually, we're not talking about like superpower lip gloss here that has, stuff in it.
Right.
The kiss is actually the catalyst for a reaction that then revives her.
Exactly. And so how do you know it's your true love? If they previously met, if they previously were in each other's proximity, there's talk of pheromones and these sort of things. But what I know is that you do have a sense of your partner, right? You know your partner's touch, you know your partner's smell. And when those lips touch, those chemicals get released and you get that amazing feeling that you don't get. It's a different thing when you kiss your true love interest versus any other human.
I'll be honest, I don't know if that works here because there's only in the movie, in the story, actually, in versions of the story that, the Brothers Grimm stuff, they don't actually meet till the end. But in the movie, while they do meet, they're not really very proximate to each other. It's very innocent.
And that's the thing about true love, right? Imagine if she was just so hypersensitive to the prince because he was her true love.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he had the ability to squirt his pheromones. He's like, ooh, who's that little hottie? Quack, quack, quack. And then,
I don't know.
It goes right up the nostril.
But kind of going a different way, I am curious from a scientific perspective.
Right.
Let's just say, the prince ostensibly has been wandering, looking for Snow White. He comes across her. Let's just say he had a sense that she needed to be revived and was going to do something about it. And he was able to, put on some sort of chapstick or, lip ointment. Or, as you were saying before, something else with like a scent that would go up her nose or something like that. Is sort of a mouth-to-mouth delivery system scientifically plausible? Like the idea that you could put something here on your lips and then kiss another person and then that would permeate, get into their cells, work its scientific magic. Is that at all?
Yeah, it does seem plausible to me. It does seem plausible because you can have drug delivery through the skin, right? Mm-hmm. And the lips on the skin, the lips on the skin, the skin on the lips is much thinner than the skin everywhere else. That's why your lips appear red. So I think that totally does fly as a delivery mechanism for a chemical. So if he had a notion that, it was this particular poison that was used, and so here is the way of doing it. But then you have to ask, dude, what kind of perv are you? Why didn't you put it on a Q-tip and then just put it in her nostril or something? Why do you have to kiss her? That's why I think it's the chemical cascade internally rather than applying an external chemical.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I do have that question sometimes about like the guy who goes around kissing unconscious women. That's another conversation we won't get into. But
that sounds so horrible when you put it that way. The prince.
Well, there's that. Yeah. I don't want to destroy anything for,
No. But we're in a new day. It's no longer 1812 or whenever the Brothers Grimm wrote this.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that the phrase that gives it away is true love's kiss. And true love's kiss is going to create an eternal chemical cascade that's going to make you feel really good, unlike other kisses would. And I think it will be different, right? You love your child, you love your parent, you love your siblings, but there's definitely something different when you're with the one you're attracted to because you feel it all over your body in different ways, right? So I think that's what that is about. And, that's the other thing about it. If you're kissed by someone who's not the one you want, it's gross, right? It's horrible.
This is true. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah. So I think that the idea of being induced in a coma by some chemical and being awakened only by true love's kiss, if you know who your true love is, not that there's some complete stranger, because there's also this idea about the spiritual nature, the divine nature of the one for you in life, right? And I throw that away. I don't accept that because isn't it a big coincidence that on this giant planet, people always happen to meet the one, right? Why aren't they half a planet away? So it's there. I don't think there really is the one, but I do think that there is the one right now, right? Or the one.
I've always said who you end up with for a chunk of time is dependent on both chemistry and timing. So I'm in total alignment with that.
Yeah, and location and who you have access to and who you don't have access to, right? And what if you're true love was born in a different century from you. You know, it's space and time.
And that is why there are so many good time travel romances.
This is true. There
One of
are.
my favorite subgenres, the time travel romantic drama.
And you know what I love about them? They have an idea in there that I absolutely just, that is so cool. And that is where you have lovers who, we were in ancient Egypt together. Then we were in, and throughout the centuries, you keep coming together over and over again. I love that idea. So let me give you my final determination of the science of love's last kiss in Snow White. How could something so ridiculous as that be considered by a serious scientist? But as somewhat childish as it sounds, if you ask me, love's true kiss flies.
Oh, you're such a romantic. And you actually gave me the perfect phrase to launch us into our story section. So you actually said the phrase "love's true kiss," and what's interesting is that you just mentioned it as potentially sort of being a childish thing. However, this idea has been around for a very, very long time.
Oh, really?
And
Snow White wasn't the originator?
No. No. And as far as, the general idea of falling in love and all of that has been around forever. But as far as the phrase "love's true kiss," the actual first known usage is Shakespeare.
That Shakespeare just being
right?
everything.
Like, he knows everything.
He's like, Shakespeare is the Einstein of whatever it is Shakespeare does.
And so, if folks are listening or watching and you know about the phrase "love's true kiss" or "true love's kiss" predating Shakespeare, definitely let us know, because I'm a word nerd and I would love to know about that. But as far as we know, it was first recorded in Richard III, and Richard says to Queen Elizabeth, "Bear her my true love's kiss," when he's talking about the Queen's daughter. So that's sort of the initial use of the phrase.
Adult daughter?
But also, the Brothers Grimm, they actually used it not in Snow White, but in the story of Sleeping Beauty. Which in their version of things was called Briar Rose. We know her as Aurora. And then it continues to show up in so many places, right? Like it's in The Little Mermaid, the Sea Witch Ursula. It's in, all different kinds. It's even in The Matrix, right?
It is?
Yes. I don't want to spoil it for folks who may not have seen The Matrix in a while, but
I got to find it myself.
But, all I'll say is think about the end of the movie and you'll remember.
Okay. All right.
So it factors in there as well.
Yes, I remember. Now I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So, so this idea has been around for a while. So when I think about Snow White and I think about true love's kiss as an antidote, there are a couple frames I could look at it. Right. So there's like me as a modern 21st century woman diving into lots of like feminist tropes about, was it okay to receive this kiss? Was there consent? Was there all of those kind of things? I'm not going to have that conversation today because that is a whole other conversation and a whole other podcast. I think about the idea that Snow White was this sort of, so first off, let's talk about context, right? Like this is 1937. You have a population that it's the middle of the Depression in the US. We've been through a world war. We're getting ready. We're ramping up to another world war. And when we think about so many of the heroines that come later, like the later Disney princesses, they seem a lot more proactive about their fates. They're complicated. They're on their journey. They're trying to learn about themselves. The interesting thing about Snow White is that she kind of very much is the opposite. She's reactive to whatever situation. And if you think about what was happening in the country and in the world, there was a lot of bad shit going on. And part of what people were trying to figure out was, how do you just get through? And how do you maintain where you are? And where is the good? And like Snow White's story, kind of tragic, and mirrors Cinderella a little bit in the sense which was the one of in the batch of original Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, in that batch of original Disney princess movies. But Snow White, her mom is gone. Her mom is dead. Her mom has died. She has an evil, awful stepmother who's incredibly jealous of her. We don't know really where her dad is. He's never mentioned in the movie, so either he's absent or certainly not sticking up for her. She's basically emotionally abused. She's forced to clean and wear rags, and eventually, she's gonna be taken out and killed, save for the mercy of the huntsman, who, swayed by her good nature and her beauty, says, "I can't kill you. Go escape. I'll trick the queen. I'll bring her back something else," because he's supposed to bring her heart in a box.
Right.
Instead, he brings a pig's heart in a box and fools the queen, thinking she's dead. So she's this person who, she's like this abused woman who like goes through life and just tries to make the best of every situation she's in. And then she gets to the dwarf's house and she, basically suggests, well, I'm going to clean up. I'm going to make myself useful because I need a place to stay so that I am not out in the cold woods all by myself.
You have just completely flipped Snow White in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of looking at it, but then
that really is when you put it that way, though, it really is obvious. That is her life. That is her life.
And then you get to this idea of like, well, where does true love fit into that? And for me, I definitely believe in true chemistry at first sight. Like, I definitely believe in that thing where you can look at someone and just be like, But true love to me is a bit of a deeper thing that takes time.
Wait a minute. You don't believe in love at first sight?
I don't know that I do. And I don't
think I do either, to be honest.
Faker.
I had to really test you there and make sure you were.
No. All right. I'll real quick. I'll try to like do the short versions. I'll share I think my own marriage is an example of that. So my husband gave me permission to share this. Not that he needs permission, but I want to respect privacy. Anyway, so
well, listen, you can't betray his confidence, right? I mean, right.
Yeah. So when Matt and I first met, we met at a bar, the old school way. We had some friends. We did have some friends in common, but we met at a bar. He got my number. I thought he was getting it because there was a play we both wanted to see. No, he was getting it to ask me out on a date, but I just went over my head. Right. I do not realize these things. So I realize actually that it's supposed to be a date only the night before we're supposed to go out. And he calls me and says, "I'm so sorry, Tamara. I've got to cancel our date because my grandmother just passed away and I need to go home, but I'm hoping we can see each other when I get back." And in my head, there are two thoughts. One, oh my God, I'm so sorry about your grandmother. Number two, oh, not a date.
This was not a date.
No, I do not say the second part out loud.
So that was not love at first sight then, huh?
No, it was not love at first sight. And so, but of course, like, I don't say this. He comes back. We go out for a very awkward drink. And there you go. Because I now knew what like mindset he was in and I wasn't in that mindset. But we still had plans to go see this play, which I didn't want to cancel. And so we see the play, we go to a friend's party, we come home, we have that sort of like cinematic moment in the car where he leans in for the kiss and, and I'm like, I stop him and I say, so the kiss never happens. I say, if you were about to kiss me goodnight, you probably shouldn't. Right. And he goes, okay, why not? And I said, well, and I basically go on this long rant about how I've loved getting to know him, but I'm not in a place to have a relationship or be dating right now. I'm thinking about leaving LA, yada, yada, yada. And he, the whole shebang. And he, after I go through this whole thing, calls me on my shit and says, is all of that true? Or are you just not attracted to me?
Wow.
Which I will say was ballsy and instantly very attractive. But my answer was, look, I'm going to be really honest. I don't know. I don't know if I'm just in a state of mind where I'm just not receptive to anything right now.
Everything, right? Yeah.
Or if once when I like kind of figure out what's going on, because I was in like a career weird moment, I might be open to something. I said, either way, I've had a great time getting to know you. I'd love to keep hanging out, but I totally get if you're not into that because you thought this was something else. He's like, you know what? I don't meet a lot of cool women in LA, either as friends or more than, so yeah, let's keep hanging out. We'll be friends. Great. We then proceed to hang out. He woos me essentially for like the next 5.5 weeks, 6 weeks or so. Um, it all climaxes in a night where I have taken on a new job. I'm about to start work as an assistant editor, like a reality show TV editor. I'm going to be working night shifts, going in at 5, leaving at 5 in the morning.
Oh, geez.
Right. This is how this crazy industry works. And so I'm about to like shift my days and my nights, and I need to start shifting being awake at night. So he comes over, we hang out, we go see a movie with a friend. We then go off and have like coffee. He drops me off at 2 in the morning. And as I'm getting out of the car, I'm like, okay, well, I'll see ya. And he's like, oh, see ya. And it's just kind of weird. And he was like, you're about to go start this whole new thing. I'm probably not going to see you. And I was like, dude, you're an actor. You're around during the day. You're one of the only people I'm going to see. And he was like, okay. And I'm like, okay. And I go inside. 10 minutes later, my buzzer rings. He's like, it's Matt. Can you come down? I'm on your stoop. I go out and he looks at me and he says, okay. He said, so I know we've had this conversation about what we are and what we're not. He said, but I don't know, call me crazy. Somehow it feels like and I went, dating. And he said, yeah, minus one essential ingredient. He said, so I just need to know before you disappear into this whole nighttime thing, like, am I crazy? And I looked at him and I went, nope.
Ooh.
And I laid one on him.
Oh, yeah. Now we get to the end of the story.
And we have been together ever since.
Wow. That must have been true love's kiss.
That was true love's kiss.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Listen, well, bless you, Matt, for sticking around for 5 weeks.
I know, right?
I'm giving them 5 minutes. Wow. So true love's kiss does exist. But what you're saying is, so tell me this then. In your cascade of chemicals, is it trust? Is it attachment? Is it attraction? What is the threshold that turns it from this ain't going nowhere to because attraction tends to happen early, right?
Yeah, I've definitely had true attraction kisses for sure that have happened right away. I don't know. I think it's that indefinable thing, and so. When it comes to like boomeranging it back to the story of Snow White and this idea that true love's kiss is the antidote, on one hand, I'm a little bit like, I don't really believe in that in my own personal life as evidenced by the story I just told. Like my life hasn't worked that way. At the same time, because all of my, what I'll call significant relationships have been with guys that I have started out in some kind of friendship with and then deepened into more. That said, when I look at the story of Snow White and the fact that she has had all of this abuse and this really crappy life, and that she, met somebody early on who made her feel beautiful and loved and entranced, and then she's in this coma, and then somebody or this state, whatever it is, and then somebody comes along and she's been thinking about this guy and she's been thinking about that he made her feel so good when so little in her life does. And then you talk about trust and you talk about how somebody makes you feel that cascade of emotions.
Yeah.
Then maybe there is something there that does actually work story-wise.
So is it fair to interpret the story in light of today's morality in comparison to a century ago?
Oh, yeah, of course it is. I mean, look, stories evolve.
They
stories do. And our interpretation of stories evolve. And so I for sure think it is. And I also
how could you save Snow White? How could you save that story? Like, do you have a meeting early on where they meet and then she says to herself, oh, I wish you would kiss me. And then later it occurs. Like, how could you save the story to bring it to, like, leave the abuse element, leave the hard life element, but let's just make the kiss something that is not as creepy in the modern interpretation as they saw it. Because, a lot of the romance of the past is creepy today, right?
Yeah, I think that's just a generally accepted idea. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to touch Snow White because there actually have been a bunch of different interpretations of it. What I will say is this, I'm going to take it in a different direction, which is the idea that I don't think, if the idea is that true love is transformative, then I don't necessarily think it has to be physical. And I don't necessarily think it has to be romantic. And I think actually two really good examples of that, one is a little bit older, are in the movie Fried Green Tomatoes,
Okay. Yeah.
where you see love between friends saving
Yeah.
each other. And
Yeah.
then in the movie Frozen, where it's about the love between two sisters and
You
how
know
they
what?
save each other.
I experienced that in my own life. I had this. It's in my memoir. I had to remove the woman as a character because of the length of the book. But I tell you, her name is now Dr. Melinda Kelly Johnson, and at the time we were just friends, platonic friends. I just hang out with her and her boyfriend. But I credit her with teaching me that I'm worthy of love and respect simply because I exist. You know, because that wasn't a place I was at that point in my life or previous to that point in my life. And, you know, it was such a intense love, but completely just friends, just completely platonic, right? But it was so transformative. And, you know, I had another friend at the same time, this guy, Marcus Howard, exact same thing. He was a dude that, you know, that was just you know, we had an intense brotherly love, but, you know, he showed me a way of being, because you know I was very defensive, right? You know, I had this armor on, and he, you know, showed me it's okay to be nice, it's okay to smile, it's okay to be the human I really am. I could remove the armor, you know, and you know, and those two individuals were in my life at the same time, and neither one was a physical love, but they were both a transformative friendship love.
So I think
could see that.
I totally agree with everything that you're saying, and I think we've actually like slid into the does it fly for the vibes section, and this idea of does the idea of, you know, the sort of trope that love is an antidote for thing, does that fly? So just to kind of and I want to continue that conversation, to go back to put like a fine point on the does true love's kiss as an antidote fly in Snow White for story purposes? My answer is it does, as long as you kind of have your contextual glasses on. You gotta have those context glasses on, either for 1937 or looking at Snow White's circumstances. So that's my definitive answer on that. But back to does it fly for the vibes and this idea of does love conquer all? I totally agree with you with what you're saying about platonic love and love of friends, and that especially I think today, where we all tend to live more dispersed, where we're not necessarily always around our family, where so much of family can be found family or chosen family. And I think you need that.
You
Like
need that, yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
important.
Even for us introverts,
Yeah.
it is very. I mean, we're a social species, right? It's not a surprise. But even though there are still those people that decide, oh, I'm going to go live in the mountains, build my own log cabin, and just live in isolation and solitude for the rest of my life. For the vibe, love's true kiss. So I was thinking, you know, we're in a more, how do I say? You know, we're more advanced now. So could there be something like love's true ass slap or love's true twerk? You know, can we expand the realm of love?
I mean, are you I think I know where you're getting
I mean, if you're rewriting, you know, like they wrote Soul Plane, you know, you can take liberties when you have the power of the pen, you know. So you write a modern version of the story that's adapted for the hip hop era.
I am sure there have been modern versions of the story that have been adapted into all kinds of things. Not going there. Not going there.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
Keeping Disney innocent. But I guess, so wait, what are you asking exactly?
Nothing. It just pops in my mind. What about, you know, butt smack? Love's true butt smack. Because a kiss is one element of, you know, affection for a person. But at the same time, so is a butt smack, right?
Well, like now I mean, it can be. Now you're
It
getting,
can be.
depends on who's doing the smacking.
Outside of sports. No, I mean, like when you're at home and, your partner just comes up and, hey, good seeing you. What's that phrase? I hate to see you leave, but I love to see you going, or something like that. I don't know the actual phrase, but y'all know what I'm talking about.
I think every couple kind of figures out between them what their expression of love is, which sort of gets into the idea, like
Right.
the very not scientific idea of like love languages, right? Like
Love,
how
yeah.
do you express,
Right.
how you care about somebody? I'll never
Yeah.
forget, like one of the most useful classes I ever took in college was called relational communication, and it
What?
was
That
with
exists?
yeah. Oh, yeah. It was called relation. It was a comm sciences class. It was a relational communication, comm studies
Wow.
class, and it was taught by Dr. Kathleen Galvin, and she was an amazing teacher. And the example that she gave in part of what we were studying was the idea of currencies and what is your currency. To use the example of gift giving, so depending on how you grew up, depending on what your values and your experiences are, for some people, gift giving is meaningful by spending a lot of money. For some people, gift giving is meaningful by doing something very personal and making it by hand. To some people, gift giving is meaningful because it's involved a lot of labor, or because it gives you a chance, like you want to ask what that person wants because you want to be specific, and there's a whole bunch of different versions of it, right? So her whole thing was, you may end up with a person, you're the person who gives you that true love's kiss. Oh, and for some people it's a gift is a physical thing, so it's kind of like a love language idea, right? So you may end up with a person for who grew up with a different gift giving currency.
Right.
And you could get mad at it, or
Yeah.
you could understand that, have conversations about it, and
Right.
work with it. So, like, if you grew up with somebody for whom, Christmas was the time where you got that like one big gift a year, and that was really meaningful and important. But your whole thing was Christmas was the time where somebody made you like the cutest little craft that got put in your stocking, and that's how you knew they cared and were listening and whatever. And you each exchange gifts, you're going to feel like, what the hell? As opposed to, if you understand that about each other, either you can choose to go, oh, my spouse wants me to make her something, even though I was prepared to go like cha-ching, cha-ching for her, I'm going to do that. Or if you're receiving the cha-ching, cha-ching, you go, all right, like that's not how my family does it, but I know for them, this is meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, the philosophy of relationship that you're describing is essentially, knowing who your partner is and having expectations of them based on who they are versus who
Yeah.
you would like them to be. Yeah.
So, all right. So our final word on the vibes is does love as an antidote fly?
Okay, let me add one thing. There's love, and there's love. So I was listening to a book by Sam Harris, who's a famous intellectual who's mostly known for Eastern philosophy thinking, right? And he talked about how spirituality can be transcendent, but it's not the only thing that can be transcendent. And he talked about the first time he took MDMA, known as ecstasy, the street drug, and how that awakened in him a love of allness, love of everyone, right? Like it removed a barrier so he could see love independently of, my romantic love with you, my familial love with you. Is just that I am full of love and I love you, right? And so that kind of love, I do think, is healing. It's a healing kind of love. And I also think that, there are a lot of people that feel alone in the world, and there are people that feel like the world is set against them. In my youth, right, when you're having a hard time, it can really feel like the whole world is against you, especially if you have a story that, the world provides for you for the reason why the world is against you. And in that case, when you find someone who you can trauma bond with, again, it does have somewhat of a healing power, right? And because we do want a sense of belonging, we want a sense of being accepted. And, and somewhere there, we're driven probably to reproduce, right? So I think that it is not a one size fits all solution. I don't think it's a antidote that works 100% of the time, but damn it, it sure does work.
All right. So basically, we could say that love is an antidote, love is a transformative power, flies if you've got the right travel partner.
Gotta have the right travel partner. And, you know, we're in the modern world, or travel partners.
Whatever gets your plane in the air. But I'm fine.
Whatever gets your rocket.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this rowdy and somewhat unexpectedly raunchy conversation about Snow White and the conceit of love's true kiss as an antidote. You can catch us with a new episode of Does It Fly every Friday. And Hakeem, where can they find us?
You can find us on our website at doesitflypod.com. You can find us on your favorite social media at Does It Fly Pod on TikTok, on Instagram. If you stream our show on audio, look for Does It Fly Pod. And you can also find us under Roddenberry. We are a podcast of Roddenberry Entertainment. So sometimes we are on Roddenberry's social media, and we each have our own social media. I'm Hakeem Oluseyi. My co-host, my raunchy co-host is Tamara Krinsky. Kid.
And now that we've shared our early kiss and first kiss stories, if you would like to share yours, please leave them in the comments or tweet, or however you are communicating with us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time.
Till next time.